people always give me a weird look because people, sometimes in podcasts or interviews, you always get asked like, what did you read growing up and what would you like to write? And I'm always like, well, the thing I read most obsessively was X-Men, like for a really long stretch.
The common answer.
Like the 180s, like probably right around Secret Wars through like, I love all the stuff through the Marauders. Like just like for a long time, it was my favorite. And then people are always like, well, who's your favorite X-Man? And I'm like, Peter. Like it's
Colossus.
It's always Colossus. And people just look at me like I'm insane. They're like, no one's ever said Peter to us.
It's always Colossus. He's kind. He's giant. He's a big brother. He's a sensitive artist. He a little bit off my beat, but in the issue where Rogue is introduced to the team, he's in his big blue robe when he's trying to make quiche. He's reading a recipe for quiche. Quiche Lorraine. How hard could it be?
You're right. Oh my God.
Hilarious. I love that scene. It's just eggs and bacon. How hard could it be? I love that. It's
great. Exciting. It's great. No, you're right. He's this kind of sensitive, artistic soul. Like, because my favorite issue, it's either, I'm pretty sure it's 183 or it's 184. It's like right when he's broken up with Kitty and Wolverine takes him out to a bar because Wolverine wants to beat him up. And Wolverine's like, I'm going to take him out to the bar and I'm going to teach him that you don't treat a girl like this. And then
take him behind the woodshed.
Right. And Juggernaut shows up and he just ends up fighting Juggernaut. And like you said, Juggernaut just like pummels him basically for the entire issue. And Wolverine's just watching. But it's also like so much of that issue, I'm like, it's just Peter going, I'm just very sorry about what I did to Kitty. I don't feel good about it.
And if you're like me, and it sounds like you are, you must have been thrilled, absolutely beside yourself at the treatment in Deadpool 2. We finally see a worthwhile Colossus.
Yes.
Oh my God, it's so good.
In the first one, he's just kind of plodding around and like breaking stuff, but it's nice to see him become like a real person. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I adore him. I feel like all the X-Men that end up always being my favorite are ones that people look at me and they're like, why the hell do you like I like Havoc a lot. And people are like, why do you like Havoc? Like, what's your problem?
Oh, yeah. Why Havoc? I hate to be that guy, but like,
I don't know. I think I think he was one where it was really superficial, where I just dug his costume.
His costume. It's his costume.
His costume is fucking great.
With the weird fins coming off his head and the chest circles.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's classic. That's crazy. And he's got a little red gem on his forehead for no reason.
And he was part of that weird team when they it was like him and Psylocke. Like it was a bunch of like weird X-Men who were never really at the forefront anymore.
Right, with him and Polaris just hanging out in the C team.
Right.
Of the X-Men.
I did like that.
I'm gonna have to break those books out again. I haven't read them in like a really, really long time. I have a hard time tracking down like suitable trades of them a lot of the time. I don't know. With the X-Men, I'm always like kind of struggling to find like old back issues, because during COVID I went back and I just bought like a ton of old Daredevils that I was obsessed with and things like that. Those have been good to find, but
it's all eBay, man.
I should use eBay. I keep trying to use the local stores and I just can't. I just am not.
They don't have enough stuff. You go to eBay. That's where I got all my Astro City collections.
Oh, really?
Because we were reading Astro City for the podcast.
Yeah, Butiak is great too. He's fantastic.
Oh, it's so good. I like to point out one thing to my co-hosts. I wasn't the one to bring up Daredevil this time. You guys feel pretty good about that.
But you were cutting it close with having the Link's Zencaster. I was like, did he forget? What's going on?
Oh, no. Okay, so I apologize for that, the cutting it close. One of my dogs threw up, and my wife was like flipping out because like we're in the process of a remodel. This is my new office. It is very nice. That is a signed copy of New Mutants #1 that I got from my local. Very excited, but like she's finally getting the house to what she wants it. And then one of the dogs just throws up everywhere. And so I'm like,
it's such a nice office, Marty. It's such an upgrade. It's so good.
It really is.
I feel like you're the kids like, look, my friends, I got new stuff. Let me show you all my stuff to you. And it's good. I love it.
I haven't shown you guys. I can't show you right now, but like I have a whole liquor cabinet now. Like, and my wife was like, okay, so this one fits here because of the way you've set up the table. I was like, no. That is a bottom shelf liquor. That does not go up in the top shelf of my liquor cabinet. That is bottom shelf liquor.
We're gonna get rid of ours, actually.
Your bar?
Yeah, we never ever drink anymore. And while the 14-year-old, we've never had a problem with her kind of getting at the bar. Her younger sister's a little more experimental, so that might be a problem when she gets a little older.
Yeah.
I'm gonna switch over to this note really quick.
Yeah.
Zoe turned 14 yesterday, Marty.
No, she didn't. Nope.
Sean, I want to show you something that I've been doing. I'm just gonna pick up my laptop and show you. I've been bored and I had extra money. So you look in the background there. There's a bunch of Shogun Warriors now.
Yeah.
Purchased those 24-inch
during COVID.
Yeah. I started with a Mazinger and I bought a couple more.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so fun.
I'm actually impressed to hear that Nick's not drinking during COVID. I feel like
right. It's like people losing weight during COVID. That's the opposite.
Well, keep in mind I live in Washington State. And I have a broader range of options available to me.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah. No.
Alcohol makes my tummy hurt. So
reasonable too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm not indulging in anything except for Wellbutrin.
Oh boy. So some TMI for you. So I've just started with a new therapist, because if you're not going to a therapist after 2020, I don't know what you're doing with yourself.
I thought I just mentioned that I'm on Wellbutrin. That's what I'm doing. Chemistry.
But my first appointment with a therapist was at 3 p.m. last Wednesday.
Oh my God, Nick.
Like the meeting started and it was just like quiet for a minute and I just started laughing. Like, should we just watch the news together? Or, I mean,
why do I feel like that is the most Nick thing
It
ever?
is. My life is just, somebody writes my life. Things happen to me that just don't happen, man. I have slipped on a banana peel and fallen down a flight of stairs.
That is just, wow. I can't even.
No words.
So in addition to like all the therapy and the right stuff, we've been experimenting and finding like local breweries, and like the local brewery by us has started making CBD brews as well. And they have a cold brew coffee called Tokyo Drift, which is also made with CBD, and it's fucking delicious. I'm not drinking that tonight. Tonight is St. Augustine's bourbon because it comes out for special occasions, and this is Sean's third appearance on the show. It's pretty fucking rad. So, cheers.
Thanks. You guys have had Caitlin on too, haven't you?
Yes,
twice. Yeah.
Twice. Oh, that's awesome. I just got on the phone with her like 20 minutes ago.
She's delightful.
Oh, really?
She's really
so good.
Yeah, Caitlin's amazing. So yeah,
she's the best. Oh,
so
we're waiting to hear. Like she teased on the show and then on Twitter that she's got a project brewing.
Soon. It's a big project soon. It's worth the wait. I've seen a little bit of it too. It's going to be pretty cool.
The last time you were on and you were like, I can't tell you now, but in a few months I can come back on the show and share with you. I had no idea what we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah, same.
Me
Same.
in some ways, me either. Kate's thing is going to be cool. I'm pretty sure it should solicit in the next two to 3 months.
Nice. I'll still be working out of my office.
I have to thank you, because when I told my wife So we had to shift schedules a little bit. Don't be mad because I'm going to be talking to the writer of Superman. She's like, oh, well, that's cool. She's not a comic book person,
Sure,
but she knows who Superman is.
Yeah, she's like my mom then.
Yeah. Yeah.
My mom usually calls me and she's like, so last time we called you were sad about a comic thing. Like, what are you working on now? And I'm like, I'm working on Superman. And my mom's like, wait, like the one in blue? Like, that's the one.
From the funny papers?
Exactly. So she kind of knows who Superman is. She was a little bit like, I think I know who you're talking about. But yeah.
I held up the book to my wife and I'm like, I'm interviewing the guy who wrote this. And she's like, that's cool. Like, all right, like everybody knows who Superman is.
Yeah, to be honest, it just dawned on me today what we were going to be doing. Like in a capacity that was like, man, maybe I should mention this to some other people or something like that.
Get excited.
So I've been caught by something that that I was unprepared for. I'm going to be honest. So we've been doing this for about 5 years, and we have guests on the show. And if we're lucky enough, we get them multiple times. I've been unprepared for the vicarious joy that I've gotten to experience through our guests, man, because it is a real delight to have you guys on here and talk to you and then watch your careers take off. Like, that's an incredible experience, man. It's amazing. You're writing Superman now.
Thanks. Well, it's a trip, and it's actually really awesome. Like, when Marty wrote me, I was like, of course, I'm excited to come back on. Like, you guys would talk to me when no one knew what the hell I was writing at all. Like, it's a really kind of cool community and communal trait in that way, right? It's like when you're starting out writing books, you're shocked when anyone's reading any of them. And then like this came on so fast and weird for me too. Like, that I'm still kind of wrapping my head around it for myself at times where I'm like, oh shit, right, there's a Superman book out right now with my name in it.
Your name on
here. Like, I forget half the time, because half the time I'm like picking up my dog's shit or making sure my kid has a mask on. Like,
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, right, no, there's this other thing that happened this month. I forgot about that.
But before any of the fellows jump in with the first official interview question, I'm going to do it first. Now, did you get Superman by cold emailing Jim Lee?
I wish I will say this. There was a point 6 months ago that I got an email from one of the editors at DC that when conversations had started about me doing anything over there, not even this, just like in general. And he was like, yeah, things are going well. A lot of people, like, Jim got your book thumbs off of Amazon. He's reading it today. And I was like, Jim who? And they're like, Jim Lee. And I was like, okay, I don't know what to do with that. Like, if he doesn't like it, do not tell me. If he does like it, I'm not even sure I'll believe you. Like, so there's definitely been some trippy moments that have come up in conversation at times. Like, there was another point where the editor was talking to me and I was like, how'd you guys like come around to finding me? He's like, well, I read Thumbs. And he's like, Bendis told us that you were an interesting writer. And I was like, wait, what? Wow. I was like, Bendis knows who the fuck I am? Like, that was a moment where I told my wife, because she had heard him on NPR, and I was like, the guy the Miles Morales guy? And she was like, yeah. I'm like, he told DC that I'm interesting. It's funny, not even good. He just told them that I'm interesting. That enough.
Dude, just having him know your name is incredible, man.
Right? It blew me away. It really, really surprised me a lot. So it's been interesting the past.
I am so excited for you that I am jittery, man.
Yeah, same.
Thanks, man.
So we'll do this in post. Hello and welcome to All Comics Considered, proudly brought to you by the Oracle Podcast Network. And this week, we're just going to jump right in and talk to one of the writers of Superman, returning 3-time champion, Sean Lewis. Sean, we're already super happy you're here.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to be back. Like I said, you guys have been having me on long before anyone gave a shit about anything I wrote. So it's really nice to be back.
It is lovely to have you back. So let's get down into it. Like,
sure.
How do you get to write? Like, you didn't just cold email Jim. How did this happen? Walk us through.
No cold emails. Yeah, I'm happy to walk you through it. I'm sure there's a lot of people writing stuff who are also like, how did that guy get that gig? Good or bad. On the first steps of it were right when we finished, me and Hayden Sherman did this book Thumbs over at Image. And I sent that over to Jamie Rich, who at the time was the editor of Batman, the Batman group at DC. Me and him had been in touch years ago. I did a book called Saints that when he was at Vertigo, this is how long things take. I did Saints 5 years ago. And when he was at Vertigo with Shelley Bond, they had shown, they had read the book and said, it's an interesting book, maybe send us something sometime. Like, it wasn't like job stuff. So I reached back out to Jamie and I was like, here, maybe you could read Thumbs. And I really thought I'd blown it because he was like, oh, are you going to be at San Diego Comic-Con this year? And I was dead broke. So I was like, I'm not, which immediately, like, my experience has been when people ask if you're going to be at a Comic-Con and you're not going to be at the Comic-Con, like, you're not going to get that job. That's not going to happen. So I was just like, fuck, okay, I guess I might have missed out on that. And luckily enough, he read Thumbs. He got back in touch with me. And he was like, all right, I really dug Thumbs. It was really interesting to me. I have other people reading it. It started with him just going like, what would you want to write here? Which is always such a tricky question. Cause you're like, I don't know, man. Like do you guys have a Green Arrow comic? Like I'll do it. Like I'm not even sure what you're publishing sometimes. And so I asked some advice from a friend of mine named Steve Orlando, who you guys probably know too.
Yeah,
so Steve was one of the first people I met when I was doing comics and has been amazingly helpful. And I was like, Steve, you're at DC or have been at DC. What do you answer when you say that, when you get asked this? And he was like, all right. He's like, look at what they're publishing right now. He's like, pick one big book you don't think you would ever get. Pick another big book that you think you could do, but probably won't get. And then pick a mid-level book. And he's like, submit and do those 3. So one of the books I picked was Superman. And it turned out that Jamie was moving over from Batman to Superman. I kind of said Superman. It was a book I was interested in, but I also was like, he's the Batman editor. Maybe he'll introduce me to the Superman edit. Like maybe, I'm in my head, I'm playing like Risk or Stratego, and really I'm playing nothing. Because I wrote him and I was like, well, maybe Superman. And he was like, well, it's interesting. I happen to know the new editor of Superman really well. And I was like, really? Who's that? He's like, me. And so he was like, so we're going to be doing this big initiative. And this is when it was still going to be what 5G was going to be. And he was like, so I've been tasked with submitting 3 writers to do this new Superman book. And he's like, I'm going to have to submit like a superstar writer, an industry vet, and they're allowing me to submit one unknown. He's like, I'm willing to put you forth as the unknown. I was like, okay, great. Didn't think much of it. And then they asked me to put together a pitch. So I put together a whole pitch of what the Superman book in the first year would be. And the pitch seemed to get people excited. Some people, I definitely think there were some people who were like, we're not giving this to an unknown writer. There was I know there was some push and pull. Then obviously everything implodes. COVID happens, DiDio leaves, like everything at DC explodes and I don't hear from anybody. So I just think everything's done. Sorry, this is a long story, but
okay, it's good.
Perfect.
This is what we're here for. Yeah.
Yeah.
So everything's kind of done in my book. I'm just like, fuck, I came so close, but at least they know who I am. And I'm still in a little bit of, interaction with Jamie at times. And then I think in May, Jamie wrote me and was like, how would you like to do a Guardian backup story in this new book? I didn't really understand what they were doing, but it was like, we're doing this thing called Future State. It's going to be in the future. Do you want to do Guardian? I'm like, I don't even know who the fuck Guardian is. Yes, I'll do it. Like, I don't. So then they sent me like a bunch of Grant Morrison books of Guardian. And it was just like, okay, you'll do these backups with Coley Hamner. And I was excited just about working with Coley. And then I finished my shorts. I was working on the shorts and then something happened and they came to me. It was a little bit later actually in the process. And it was like, would you be interested in writing the Superman book as well? And I was like, Yeah, I mean, yeah, what do you need? And it was like, well, here's the
I think I might be able to fit it in. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely like open mouth, like just shaking head, like, yes, I of course I'll do this. And then basically they just laid it out for me where they're like, okay, it's being split in families. There's a Batman family, a Justice League family, a Superman family. So your book is going to be coming out probably first of all the Superman family books. The thing is basically everyone else who's writing a book has created their entire pitch. And we know that they're in Candor. We know, like, there's a lot of things that we already know are happening. So do you feel comfortable coming in and figuring out how to like bring in some stuff from what'll eventually be Superman and Wonder Woman, and some things that'll be in Superwoman, and some things that'll be in the other Superman book and Midnight or in the backup stories? Can you look at the material and figure out how to like make a story for us? And I was like, I mean, as you said, Nick, I'm like, yeah, yes, give me it. And then it was really fast and furious from there on. That had to be like, I think I started with them in May. I think Superman came up either the end of June or maybe beginning of July. And I knew I had to get the finished story for the first book in by like mid-September, and the second book by like November. So at that point, it was pretty fast and furious and working from like the other outlines and then I was also contacting like the cool thing. One of the really cool things is with some of the associate editors, like literally I would just ask for older comics and they'd show up in my mailbox. Like I'd be like, wow. Like, can I get all the early appearances of Brainiac, like all the Silver Age appearances? And then I would have a link like 20 minutes later, and I would have like every Silver Age appearance of Brainiac, and I would just be sitting next to my wife, just like
outstanding,
reading all of it. That part was like really, really awesome. I mean, all of it has been really kind of cool and dumbfounding, but that's so it started with Thumbs. I mean, in some ways it started with Saints 5 years ago, then Thumbs like about 2 years ago. And then the past summer, just within all the chaos, it really all happened at once.
I've got a few questions. You might
go for it.
Like 3 questions popped up in my head. All right. So Brian Michael Bendis concluded his Superman run with issue number 28. Man, what's it like trying to fill those shoes?
I try not to think about that part of it. Honestly, like not even just him, but I was thinking about a lot about like, Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman run, which like I adore. Like at one point I went back and I was like, I'm gonna read All-Star Superman again. And I got like 2 pages in. I was like, I can't fucking do this. I can't. This is not actually helpful. So I looked at the issues to try and get a sense of, because there's so much of the Superman family in it, and I hadn't known John Kent or I hadn't known the extensions of the family super, super well. So it was kind of reading those back and going like, okay, where are they at? And then it was a lot of conversations. Like, it's an interesting gig, right? Because like, there's also so many conversations with editorial, because I'm like, I'm coming in to do like 2 issues in this absurdly large event you're doing. So in a lot of ways, I also need to know like where, like, not only, even if I didn't ask, I would be told like, where do you need John to go? Like, what do you need to set him up for the future of what you want him to do in the DC universe? And that becomes, it's interesting. It's an interesting job in that way, because like when I'm doing the indie stuff, it's usually like passion projects of me and Caitlin or me and Hayden, and we're fully in charge and we know where the characters are going. And if the fans don't like it, we like, if they're fans, that's like a win to begin with.
This is actually branching directly into my first question, which was, what's it like to write in a framework like that? Because you're writing, I mean, it's like a multi-tiered framework, right? Because you're writing, you're writing for future state, right? You're writing for the entire totality of the future of the DC universe, and you're writing within the context of everything that's come before, right? Like, how do you make your mark in that?
I think like for me, I was trying to figure out early. I mean, obviously you're always with all of these things, like your competitive aspect comes up, and also your survival instinct for your career is like, I want to have like a rock star. I want to make a big splash. But with this, there was other constraint. Like, not constraint sounds negative, but I felt like they were kind of positive in a way where it was like a bunch of.
I don't think in terms of creating fiction, I don't think constraints are a negative thing.
Me either.
So
no, I'm in a good room then. It's sometimes you talk to other people like constraint sounds like you're complaining, and I'm like, no, it's kind of a necessity within what we're doing. Otherwise, there's no rules and it's too big.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Having guide rails is sometimes you just need to have it.
Absolutely. And in some ways, it was set up for me in a nice way of that, where I was like, there's literally like six to 8 other books and worlds that are going to be part of Superman in this. And so I had to look at everything they were doing. So like there's things in the Superman of Metropolis, like Andres Trojan was something that came out of Midnighter. Like that's going to be a huge part of the Midnighter story. So it was like, okay, I've got to figure out how to implement him. I know what's going to happen in the Superwoman series. So I have to set up how it's going to make sense that she does what she does at the start of that book by what happens in this book. Like there was a bunch of things where it was like, in some ways it was like solving a puzzle. It was like solving a puzzle more than starting from scratch writing, you know, where I'm like, I have all these pieces. And then I would say the way I approached it is once I had all the pieces, I was like, what's the thematic I'm personally interested in that the editors also are interested in for John that can fit all of this? And for me, it became a lot about like, how do we not make the same mistakes as our fathers? And like, how do you get out from underneath basically the largest shadow you could imagine, you know? So it was just, so it was a lot of that for me, was thinking like, if I'm Jonathan and this is the first time that I'm on a solo mission where I'm really being left alone to do something, what are the mistakes that I would make that my dad made? I just kept thinking of like relatives of mine and people I've taught, you know, me and Marty were talking about teaching, and like, you know, there's so many times where you see like people trying to get out of these cycles of their own parents, of like, whether it's like poverty or an early pregnancy or a, you know, and like how it can become cyclical, that it became like, I mean, it's just Brainiac, but for me, it was like, well, and I knew I knew the city was going to get bottled and John was going to do it. That was the first thing I was told, was like, we need you to figure out why he does this.
My God, man. My God. This wasn't just, you got Superman. This was, hey, we know that, you know, we're really kind of, we need good ideas for future movie properties. We're in a really tense state for that. And our next phase for the entire development of DC is really kicking off here. Do you think you could come in and tee it all up for us?
It was an interesting challenge. I mean, you know, in grad school, I went to grad school for playwriting. We used to do this thing every year to start the year called a bake-off. And we would be given a bunch of ingredients, like our teacher would be like, we need an affair, and the presence or absence of light, and like someone, and like literal water has to be in the play somewhere. It would be like a list of things, and you would have to write a full-length play over the weekend that implemented all of them. And so in a weird way, I kind of approached it. I kind of approached it with that, where I'm like, I have a ton of ingredients. So now I have to just figure out like, how can I make the ingredients into a story that I feel excited, that I personally feel excited about. Then I think we can put it out and see what other people think.
I am so jealous. This sounds like the most exciting and like fun and fulfilling challenge, you know?
Yeah.
It was cool. I enjoyed it. And I'm also looking at it already. I'm already working on a new project, and I'm like, I can see, it's nice when you can see how something has helped improve you, right? Where you're like, oh, I'm approaching these pages and how we're doing this differently because of what I just went through, which is good. I mean, for my own career, it's probably good. So,
Sean, I want to go back briefly to the guide rails and how you have to write this stuff. It sounds like they're giving you like refrigerator magnets, like, okay, we're gonna have some sort of Son of Brainiac, we're gonna have a Kandor reboot, we're gonna have Supergirl, put it all together. That's insane. That's but amazing. When other people are writing future Superman, are you talking to those creators, or are you just getting their stuff and then going, oh, I have to work around what they're doing?
No, because I was pretty late. Like I said, like you know, we'd even done like an online conference, and I was working on Guardian at that point solely. So I was part of the online thing, and I was hearing about all the ideas, and I was like, this sounds fucking awesome. Like in some ways I was jealous. I'm like, these stories sound amazing. I wish I could do more. Like I'm excited about what I'm doing, but it just, you know, you hear about some others and you're like, wow, that's fucking so cool. So then when it happened, you know, part of it I took on myself. Like the main thing I got from editorial was the city's going to be bottled. We don't know why it happens or who does it, but we know the city's going to be bottled, and all these other stories are built off of that, of it being bottled. And so then once I heard the other stories were built off of it, I probably didn't have to, but I made the choice then to look at the other pitches and go, all right, if that guy's showing up in your pitch as a major character doing this, then I don't see how he couldn't be in what I'm doing. And it probably was also a safety for me in some ways of with the time that we were working with, of going like, all right, there's some pieces here to try to bring together, right? That I'm really just trying to make connections and threads. But it also, I'm sure subconsciously, to answer what Nick was asking before, I'm sure it took some of the pressure off of me, because I started just thinking like, my job is to, instead of thinking like my job is to write the greatest Superman story ever known, I was like, my story is to lay out the table so my book and all the other books not only speak to each other, but have like an awesome conversation, right? That it's a really that they can work together in a way that's really good and exciting. So when you get all of them, it should really pay off. And so that was more of the challenge I gave to myself, and that seemed more manageable than, I actually think if I had no guardrails or guidelines or any of that, and it was just like write your like ultimate Superman story, that probably would have been so much worse.
Destination Panic Attack.
Oh, man. I mean, there was a couple of those anyway, of turning to my wife and going like, I'm gonna fail. This is gonna be real bad. And like, maybe I should get out of this. Like,
I have two questions.
Sure.
One of them was Brain Cells your idea, or was that one of the sticky notes? That was yours.
Brain Cells was mine.
Man, I have never seen a new villain that I was so attached to almost immediately. Brain Cells was amazing.
Yeah. Let's just dig into the book. I loved the book, man. I thought it was really strong. Yeah. Brain Cells was bitching. He was it was such a good, because man, am I explaining this badly? Superman's son fights Brainiac's son, right? Like, I mean, and they're both sort of learning the same and repeating the same mistakes that their father made in their first encounters. Like that theme came super clear to me. So
I'm so glad. No, absolutely. I mean, that was the basic of working it from, and yeah, I mean, I was trying to think who would fight in it, and I was walking my dog, and I got really obsessed with the idea of this floating ball with multiple mouths. Like, that's how it started. And I kept trying to think,
this is a weird question, but do you remember Mad Balls?
Oh, yes. I do. Yeah, yes. You would bring to school and bounce.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That might have been subconsciously in there. I don't remember though. I just got really fascinated with the idea of it having multiple, like, speaking out of all of the mouths, and the mouths having touches of different personality. And once I thought that, I was like, well, that's fucking insane. I'll pitch it and see what the editors think. And they got excited by it. And then it was just going like, all right, well, I think it's connected to Brainiac then, and it's this AI. Then it came kind of naturally out of that. But it was, a lot of times those just come on these weird moments of a walk, and I'm like, I think it would be cool to see that. Let me figure out how to make it be more than just a cool idea.
It's unsettling. The character design is unsettling.
Yeah, it's unsettling.
Yeah. No, I was immediately visually arrested. I'm like, this is knocked right out of the park. You know,
that page spread John did is insane. Like,
I don't want to make you have too big a head. When I first read Bendis' Superman 1, he introduced a brand new villain. I was like, all right, this guy. This guy, he's just a big dude. He's hairy. He punches really hard. Whatever. But when I saw Brain Cells, I'm like, what the hell? This is so good.
And that weird flirt, like, is he a bad guy? Is he not? Is he?
Right.
I don't really know.
He's sort of ambiguous.
I'm not teaming up with you, Brain Cells. Yeah.
You know the book pretty well. Damn.
I actually really enjoyed the book. I read it just a little while ago. But you know, the entire time I was reading it, I was thinking like, oh man, who's voicing this guy? You know, like this is I'm seeing this in a Young Justice animated style.
Oh, it'd be cool. It'd be so cool to see. Like that. That's also one of the DC where you're like, that could happen. Like that's
no man. It would not shock me at all if you were destined for at least an animated movie from this.
Zavala's voice actor, what's his name? I'm totally blanking.
Lance Reddick.
Lance Reddick. That's kind of who I'm hearing.
When you know, I'm just in a deft pen stroke, you're already building a mythology that I want to dig deep into. You talk about, you just throw these out. 5 empires, the golden gods of Creon, the time luchadors.
That is so good.
Yeah.
The time
luchadors.
I want to read all these guys. This is amazing.
All right, man. So that was classic. Like that was classic. Oh boy, there's a bunch of names I was about to say that I'm not going to say because those people have disappointed me. And now that I'm thinking of them, they're disappointing me again. But a bunch of my favorite comic authors from the 90s did spreads like that like, okay, I'm going to drop in 6 Edgar Rice Burroughs novels, you know, into this just all in a row. I'm a sucker for that. You're gonna get me every single time when you do that. I love it. I want to know more about the big weird, what are the sun priests or whatever they were, the solar gods.
Priests of Ceros. Yeah, they were. Yeah.
I mean, when they told me it was a future and it was 10 years in advance, I'm like, there has to be other adventures. And also, I mean, we're all roughly the same age. I think, Nick, like, I have the same experience of the comics I love in the 90s where I'm like, I would read a book and suddenly I would hear about like 2 or 3 adventures that hadn't happened. Or if they did, I hadn't read those issues and they would just be dropped in a panel and I'd suddenly be like, what the fuck's that? Like, it seems like awesome, you know? And some of them were definitely things where like, you know, in the beginning when I was trying to think of different some of them connected when I was thinking of when I was first talking about the 5G pitch and going like, who are people in that year that something would happen with? You know, I'm also pulling from that and going like, I think the time luchadors will be cool. Like, I'm just
yes. Like, the time luchadors.
I am a big wrestling fan. I totally dug that. I ate it up. So
I loved it. I want to ask a question, Sean. Like one of the things that we've noticed as a writer and as a creator, that like, and coming from the indie scene, you've got really strong relationships with Hayden and with Caitlin. How is it working with like Michael Avon Oeming is one of my favorite like artists of all time, and Cully Hammer is fantastic. I don't know John Timms. Like I think that's a failing on my part. How did working with these artists, some of who are like, you know, multiple Eisner award-winning people that, I don't know, like, how do you work with them? And how did it work? How was that process for you?
I mean, it was different with each in really fun and funny ways. You know, like John's in Costa Rica. So like right when I found out I was doing it, the first thing I asked for was his phone number. And I was like, I just want to get on the phone with John. I didn't know his work a ton either. And I wanted to just be like, I'd seen some of his designs. And the designs were super cool. And I just wanted to hop on the phone and go like, same thing I do with Hayden and Kate. Hayden and Kate, I just know so well at this point. So it was more of like, what do you like drawing? Like, what gets you excited? Like, and he was like, my background's in animation. I like motion. I like action. And I was like, okay, I'm going to write a pretty active, animated feeling script then. Like, because it was going to be, you know, when I work with Hayden and Kate, even with them, the scripts are really different for each of them. Like, I'll give Kate what looks a little bit like a screenplay, right? Like it's half prose, half dialogue. Hayden, I kind of give like a short story to. Like it's just like a straight up prose story that has like breaks in it. I've done a little bit of full script. So with him, I was just kind of going like, okay, you're coming from animation, you want to draw motion. That's where I'm like, we're going to have some punches. We're going to have Superman in the air. Like even just like, he's going to be in the air a bit, right? Like he's going to be flying.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to have some of the exposition happening within action because that's where you're living. Coley was awesome. Coley was awesome and everything I could have hoped for it. We also hopped on the phone. Coley's funny, man, because there's we were talking a lot. And I told you I had gone back and started reading Daredevil. Coley's a little bit older than me, and so but like with a huge encyclopedic comic book knowledge. And so when we first started talking, I was like, the Superman books feels this specific way. And I'd seen his like his drawings of like what the uniform and everything were going to look like. And I was like, I would love if this book felt a bit more like some like Grunwald Captain America and like some Frank Miller, Klaus Janson, Daredevil. And like we talked about the Daredevil a lot because I was like, John's doing such like intricate work of like what the spaceship looks like and the city and like it's really, really like compact, that I was like, I would love to get a bit more theatrical in the Guardian book where we didn't actually need full background sometimes, or we could allude to it. Like, like there's some panels in the old Daredevil that I kept sending to him or talking to him about where I was like, I love this panel where like Bullseye has been like had his back broken and he's just in the hospital and there's it's just a white panel with no lines and it's just the lines of the light coming through the shades is all the only thing else in there. There's no doctors, there's no machinery. And I was like, so as long as the editors are cool with it, I don't care if we have full backgrounds all the time. I'm kind of more interested in like this kind of emotional symbolism, which allowed us to do some things where I'm like, I want to do a Will Eisner type double page spread. But I remember he called me. There's a double page spread that has to do with this, like the magician is conjuring the television. Because the main direction I got from the editors on Guardian is they're like, that's the spread. That's the spread. So this is a funny story of that, because the main direction I got from the editors is they were like, as much as it's about Guardian, we want to really make Metropolis, like what's great about Metropolis. Like we really want to push how it's different than Gotham, but start to really create it as its own city at the same level as Gotham. I was like, okay, I've got how many pages? I'll try. And so we got to that. I sent that spread and Cole, I remember calling me, he was like, Sean, I don't know what the fuck to do. What is this page? And so it was kind of cool because we like, with John, it was written because it was I was working more with his animation background. It was a lot more like a screenplay, like panel by panel, but thinking of it like a screenplay. Where with Coley, it was much more suggestion. And so he was just like, I don't know what to do with this. And we got in a conversation on the phone. I was like, all right, like, there's like a Daredevil, like 175. He fights the Gladiator. There's this amazing page where he's going across the city and it looks like Daredevil's a giant walking over the city. Like it's very symbolic. I'm like, it's not realism. And so he was like, oh, so then he started talking to me about Will Eisner. And he's like, Eisner influenced Frank Miller. I didn't know that. So I was like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. So we then started just talking kind of about those two things. He was like, so you want me to make it like a really storytelling Will Eisner type page? And I was like, yes, it should go across, like he's just going across the rooftops on the top. There's some story over here. And then we move into the magic going into the next page. Like, I don't care how you lay it out, but that's the feel and the flow of it. So it was, in that sense, it was kind of different. Like John, once the script went in, we didn't have a ton of conversation. Coley was good because he was just calling you and he's like, I don't know what the fuck you're doing here. Which I love. I think some good stuff can really come out of that because you just start talking about it and like I'm getting his response and he's like, I like the script. I'm just kind of confused. This, like, why is there 5 panels here? And I'm like, well, let's talk it out and figure out the best version. Like, I'll tell you what I'm emotionally going for. You know, I mean, this is what I do with Hayden and Caitlin a lot of the times is I'm just like, you guys know the visual look of this better than me. I'm not going to pretend that I'm a better visual designer than you. If I was, then I'd make more money not working with you. So in a lot of times in those cases, I just feel like it's so much better for the work to just go like, well, let's talk it through. This is what I'm going for. How do you see it playing out? And then finding that middle ground where it plays. And it helped because then when we got to the second half, there's another one of those layouts when he's driving the car at the end of that. And it made that page absolutely quicker because we had talked through he understood the concept now we were working from.
It's awesome.
All right, man, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. We'll come back. I'm positive a little bit lighter subject matter, but I feel like there's probably some stuff that we should dig into. Superman, Truth, Justice, and the American Way. We could go. People attack the Capitol building. That's so Superman is, I mean, you got your pen, tip embedded in the zeitgeist, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, it's interesting. There was like a huge article that came out today in like one of the comic blogs that was talking about like how prescient a lot of the future state books have been with the current moment.
The diner scene was, I mean, it literally you could have just swapped that out for any of the images that we saw on TV, man.
I read that. I was like, wow, did they just like write that like yesterday and just ship it out real quick? How is that so relevant right now?
I got a lot of strong QAnon vibes from the people in that crowd. Like, you're just missing the QAnon shaman.
There's definitely blind following, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, that, I don't know. I just think like, I think that's happening in a lot of the books just because like we've all been locked inside for like about a year, which also in a weird way, like is making us have to observe in a way that maybe we wouldn't in a regular basis. Like,
I agree with that.
You know what I mean? Because I think like there's less distraction of everything else we're used to doing, all the other noise of like, I'm gonna go to the diner today and I'm gonna go to the library and all these other things. Like, it's like, no, I'm home watching this.
We're here in front of the internet, and the internet is making it its mission to put the things that we have been able to look away from directly in front of us and force us to look at it for the first time. I mean, yeah, we're going through some rough stuff, right? But here's the thing. We're going through rough stuff because for the first time in a very long time, if ever, there are enough white people that care that it has made the other side scared and scared enough to get violent. Like, if there wasn't possibility of change, they'd stay home.
Yeah, it's a super fascinating moment. I think also like just we've also just never seen anything like Trump before, like which I think like I don't even know that people really know how to, good or bad, supporters or not, no one has seen something like Trump before in a leadership role.
We have. It's just been a long time.
It's never had the internet before, and it's never had like a propaganda wing through right-wing media either.
We've never had a Trump with access to nuclear weapons.
That's true.
Thanks for reminding me of that one, Nick. Like, fuck, I don't want to.
Well, look, man, as bad as things are now, and as bad as the evil people that we're looking at right now, they got nothing on the people that used to be president. You know what I mean? Like, those people owned slaves. They held whips. That's the history of our country.
This is who we are.
Yeah.
Tim?
I wanted to ask about Superman.
Sorry, man.
Let's go.
Yeah.
It would. I do think, Nick, for bringing in that type of analysis, it's necessary.
How can we not? How can we not talk about that when we're talking about Superman, right? And how can we not talk about what's going on?
But let's talk about our boy John.
I just want to talk about Superman. I want to talk about the horrible real life dark side that's in our White House right now. I don't want to talk about that guy.
Fair enough.
Really quick aside, when I first saw Tim's cover, I was like, oh man, it looks like he was sitting at the foot of Gil Kane. The classic lines, beautiful structure, bone structure, beautiful stuff. He must have been thrilled when he saw his, we're like, oh my god.
I fell in love immediately because it just makes you think of like how like what's this book gonna look like? I mean, you start fantasizing right from go, but yeah, his line work is incredible. I was
have you had the opportunity to hold a physical copy? Have you seen a physical copy?
Yeah, I got comps sent to me like a week before everybody, so I got that and I was just like, oh, yeah, that was a pretty huge moment because my wife gets a lot of things. I don't order much, so she was like, somebody sent you something, and I didn't know that it was coming yet, and it was definitely a moment where we opened it. It was like, oh, I felt like when they opened the suitcase in like Pulp Fiction, you know, like cold below, it just like hits you, and you're like, oh, I don't know if I can stare straight into this. But yeah, it was a cool moment.
In regards to the character design, are you the one that ditched the cape, or was that was by editorial?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's definitely not me. Editorial, there was definitely, because there was a lot of notes I think going on when it came to covers and some of the pages, even of how the costume fully was going to come into effect. And I think how to make him. I'm actually I shouldn't even say, because I think I'm guessing. My guess is how to differentiate from Clark. But yeah, that was a decision that was made.
So I agree actually with that, and I agree with the decision. For me, it worked for the character, and it echoed Connor Kent to me a lot, which was very positive for me. This guy was a lot to me like Connor Kent, Terry McGinnis. And
it's funny that you
great.
mentioned that, Nick, because my first impression wasn't. It should have been that. My first impression was more like Invincible.
Oh no, yeah, man, I can see that too. I can see that too.
Yeah, I haven't even thought of that, but yeah, it has a similarity, even because with the shoulders.
Yeah,
well, and he's a thinner build. He's not built like Kal-El yet.
No, absolutely.
The other thing is that I love Superman for the same reason that we love our favorite character, Colossus, and that is because he's good. He's just good, right?
He's good.
He's not dark. He's not edgy. He's not too angsty. He's a good guy with a lot of power who wants to do good with it, right?
Right.
Because of that, people are like, well, he's boring. So how do you get around that that perception that we have a different Superman. He's a young Superman, so he's going to make mistakes. So he's not maybe as fully fleshed out and just, wise beyond everything. So you're going to get around that boring accusation. But did you think about that?
It's funny. I would probably be one of those people who 10 years ago, if I was asked about Superman, might have actually fallen in the camp of like, I read him, but like he's so powerful and this or that. Then I had a kid. And I think that changed it pretty massively. And I was pretty upfront with Jamie when I first started pitching them on Superman about it, is like, he's like, what is your draw? And I'm like, you know what? I've got a young son. He's obsessed with Superman. And I'm like, and it's made me think about like, what's the draw to a toddler to like Superman, past the costume and everything. But I'm like, I was just like, it is something that's fascinating, is like, there's something interesting about someone who we can rely on, right? Like I'm a big theater guy. So I was just like, I just started to realize that he is Kent in King Lear. There's this character in King Lear who's King Lear when he's going mad. He's got this knight who's always been by his side named Kent. And Kent is the only one who will be honest with him, but he's also the only one who will never abandon him. Like, he's the moral center of the play. He's always just like, this is what's good and right, and I'm going to do it. And I was just like, we don't got a lot of Kents in the world right now. And I was like we need a Kent. We need them. It fell out of fashion to be that. Like, it became a lot more interesting to become, John Hamm and Bryan Cranston in like Breaking Bad and Mad Men. Like, so much of the golden age of television is like this anti-hero television.
Too many Han Solos, not enough Lukes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I was just kind of like, how do we do that? And then I had a really great conversation with Hayden about it, where like, I knew Hayden was a really big Superman fan. And like, this was way back when they first were asking me to pitch it and I was working on it. And I was just like, Hayden, what's your draw? He's like, Superman just wants to be everybody's best friend. And I was like, he's like, I love that. And I was like, fuck, I now understand him way, way better. Like, it made a lot of sense to me. And it also and it being John definitely made it easier for me, because I'm like, he can make kind of mistakes and fall into things. And a lot of my own work has just always, my own fascination is how can we be good? Like, the complications and difficulties in a modern world of actually doing good deeds. Mm-hmm. Right?
You're talking my language. I love it. You guys are both this is exactly what I wanted to talk about.
It's my personal, whether I never will write something that doesn't have it in it, because I feel like that's just DNA wise what I personally wrestle with, right? Like, my own self-hate and guilt and Catholicism and everything else plays into it, but also my own hope, my hope for my child. And so in terms of then getting into like how to avoid making him boring, I'm like, the wrestling match of how to be good is that's never going to stop. That's never going to be boring, because it's what we're always actually wrestling with at its core.
Yeah. so I used to be the person that was like, Superman's boring. He's ultimately powerful, whatever. Blah blah blah. He fights.
I remember that. I remember you saying that.
I used to scream about this, right? I have turned around completely on Superman because I came to realize that the constraint of like sort of imposed on writers of Superman being the most powerful. Superman's always going to be the most powerful, right? Like that's his role. Like he's always going to be the strongest and the biggest and the best, which eliminates this whole sort of range of danger-based and fear-based storytelling that we're used to in adventure stories and action stories, right? It's all about the anticipation, the anxiety you feel. Are people going to be hurt? You don't really feel that anxiety for Superman. Bullets bounce off him, right? When you drop that away, you realize that the only story that can be told for Superman, and the only story that ever has been told, is what does it mean to be good? It's Superman from its conception to now is one of the world's longest meditations on the idea and the question of what is it to be good? When you have no limitation, right? Like all of our philosophies and our like our meditations on good acts and how to be good are all impacted by the practicalities of the world, right? I don't have enough money to give money to everybody. I can't donate. I only have so much blood to give, right? Superman does not have those limitations. He only has a single question. What does it mean to be good? That's fascinating. It's incredible. You got dropped into an interesting situation because you don't have that, right? This Superman's vulnerable.
He's vulnerable.
He's not fully Kryptonian. He has danger. There's a whole element of storytelling there available to you that wasn't available before. That's interesting, man. That's cool.
Absolutely. It was definitely one of the things that was really exciting for me, and I think made it less daunting than being Clark. Because Clark has such a massive history, I think that I would have really worried about the weight of that. Where with John, there was a level of like, it's kind of a blank page, especially him as an adult, of just going like, all right, he's from the Superman ethos, but like he's his own person. So what is it going to mean for him? It really changes it.
How do you be Superman in a world that already has Superman? What does that Superman look like?
Yeah,
that's a huge question.
Yeah.
To me, that could be an easy 2 to 3 year long exploration, right? Is like how to become your own Superman is like a really fascinating like idea, and it's something that I think we all wrestle with. Like my wife and I were talking about like our ages earlier today, right? Of like, I'm too old to put up with this, and at the same time, like we never actually think about our age. It's like you're not really an adult until you just finally accept that you're an adult and claim it. Like you can kind of in our culture get away with not being adult forever. Like if you wanted to, or not taking.
You're wearing a Dead Milkman shirt, which immediately precludes that. So.
I'd argue that we don't have an adult in the office right now. Two things. Nick Fury. One, I don't think Superman, either one of them, thinks about what is good. They know.
I agree.
Good. I agree. We are asking as the audience what is good.
I agree.
They know. Agreed. Okay. Where was I going with that? If you to torture Spider-Man's motto, with great power comes great responsibility. With ultimate power comes ultimate responsibility, and that's what the Supermans do every day. That's their thing. So they already know. They got that nailed down. I'm curious about the direction we took Kara, because she is like so Silver Age with a flying crypto super dog and a super horse, and she's got the show where she's just a shiny happy super person, and she's really cold and she's really angry here.
Yeah,
fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, part of that was knowing. I knew that. So the Superwoman book came out today or Tuesday. What day is today's Wednesday? So yesterday. And so like, I knew that she goes off and creates like her spoiler. She goes far away from Earth and creates her own thing. I won't go too much into it, but I knew it was that I knew the two pieces of direction I got were like, she was not chosen to be Clark's heir in this world. So I was like, okay, so you've got somebody where she's really the most powerful of the super people at this point and is not chosen to be rightful, like in her, would she not think in her mind that she might rightfully deserve that? And then I also knew where Joelle's book was going to be, where the next book was going to be, was she's gone off and created her own place where she can be the superpower. And so with those two things, I was like, all right, if I know I need her to leave, that something, it goes too far. But also like, there's this Nerodium, which is from another story too. Like there's just a lot of stuff. But I was like, okay, the Nerodium I know affects full Krypton, like will affect full Kryptonians. So John can skate on it. So I'm like, what if what it's doing is it's amplifying her actual emotion? And what happens if she's in seeing her actual ugliness come out, it makes her decide. I mean, I don't want to give away too much for where the second book goes. But for me in the first book, her coldness is coming from, there's some built-in resentment that I did not get what I deserved. And this Brain Cells character is somehow able to get it to come out. Like he's like how alcohol can do it with a bad drunk, right? Like,
yeah. I'm gonna be honest, that sounds like the story we desperately wanted from Carol Danvers post Civil War II.
I mean, there's something in that, right? These female characters who are the most powerful people in their universe, and everyone's like, we're glad you saved us. We'll call you when we need you. And it's like, well, shouldn't I be the champion of you all? And they're like, not right now.
Not right now.
There's this teenage kid that we've decided should take over instead of you.
Yeah, your nephew who's younger and a lot less experienced than you.
Yeah.
He gets to actually be Superman. And not only that, you should help him. Like that was why it was a big thing of even Brain Cells calling out of like, Brainiac actually got destroyed by Kara, right? Like, and if you had been left alone to fight the Time Luchadors and the Golden Gods, like Metropolis wouldn't be standing. Like Kara has saved you over and over and over again, and she's gonna have to save you again with me. And what does that mean for when Kara arrives? And it's like, also like, I hope people get it. Like the first time he is left alone with Metropolis, all Kara knows is she's gone for like a week and shows up and Metropolis is
the city's gone. He did that at the drop of a hat. It was like his first idea and he just did it.
Like as far as she knows, it's disintegrated, you know? So like in my mind, that anger is just like, I can't believe not only that I wasn't chosen, but like the wild irresponsibility of giving all these people's lives over to this kid who did this.
So when I was reading that initial fight sequence, the thing going through my head was that you're doing a really good job of expressing a character who was distracted. He was elsewhere. He was not there, right? Like Brainiac, Dead Cells, Brain Cells, blah, 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 blah. Just, I mean, like ran rings around him, right? Because he was not thinking at all. He's like, yeah, everybody should have a plan, right? and Brain Cells is like, by the way, I can predict everything that you could possibly imagine doing within, 0.001% accuracy. He just ignores him. I mean, like, Brain Cells just told him what he was going to do, basically, the whole time. It was completely obvious.
It was very good.
Well,
I like the book.
He doesn't have Clark's wisdom, right? He doesn't have the experience.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly. I was like, oh, man, that's a repeated mistake.
And again, if anything, he has the youthful arrogance that we all have at times. Like, how many times in my life did someone say to me, this is exactly what's going to happen if you do this? I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to do it because I know. And then I do it. I'm like, fuck.
In my day job, I said that a lot. It's like, it's not going to go well. It's not going to go well, buddy. You did the thing. All right, well, let's have a conversation in front of the judge.
I'm glad you came up with Nerodium, but in my mind, I was like copy pasting that over with like purple kryptonite, whatever color kryptonite we haven't had yet, plaid kryptonite. Yep.
Anyway. That I have to give credit to Becky Cloonan and to Michael Conrad because they came up with that for the Midnighter book, and they explained what the Nerodium was, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. And I was also trying to think of like, how can I have a thing that I knew Kara had to be in the book as well as John, obviously. And I was like, Kara's more powerful than him. How can John emerge as his own hero? Right. And I was like, well, one way is that she can be somewhat incapacitated by this kryptonite. And the one thing John has going for him is not his experience, not his handling of the situation, but it is, I'm not as affected by this thing. I can survive this thing, which makes me at least useful right now.
My weakness is a strength.
Finally. Yeah. Finally, one of these things works out.
I've got a question about a line in the book that's come up a couple of times, where they were saying I think both Kara and the villain, brain cells, was saying, you're too human, right? Now, to me, Superman is the most human of the superheroes. He's deeply, deeply human, even though he's an alien. So what do they mean by you're too human?
I think in terms of the negative form of human, which is probably my own bullshit leading into the book, honestly, like, because that happens is like, it's a lot of times my own like, obviously our human sides are what you and I love about Peter, right? About Colossus, is that like, he's so human, even though being a superhero. But in my day-to-day life, the things that always make me feel weak or frail are these like more gross sides of my humanity, my self-doubt, my neurosis, my arrogance, my ego, right? Like, in a lot of ways, I feel like they're just replacing ego with human, that you have frailty that we don't have. Like, in some ways what you said, like, I don't question if I'm doing the good thing. Where in this, John is questioning, like, especially once it starts going bad, like, oh my God, did I fuck up? Like, did I do a bad, like a really, really bad thing? And when we get into the follow-up to this, the second one, it's so much going to be about him, this conversation of not only how can John learn to be what good is for him, but how John can emerge as the most human version of part of himself, right? Taking on the responsibility and the things that fail for him to be his strength, as opposed to it being the negativity. A lot of, I think, what everyone's saying in it are these like mirrors, where they're saying the thing that if the other person doesn't want to hear the most. Like, for John right now, hearing that he's human is like saying, like, you're weak.
So I assumed that brain cells was manipulating him there. He's basically just getting this out of his head, because the thing that John has got to be questioning himself about is his human DNA, right? That's the thing there's a reason why Kara is more powerful than him. It's the reason why he's got to feel like that's the reason why he's in his father's shadow, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. But when I read that, I was like, well, he probably loves his mom. That's probably not a dig. Lois seems like a good mom. I don't know.
That's very true. It's very true. I can't disagree with that at all.
Maybe you should be more human, brain cells. How about that?
All right. So I wanted to ask you guys a question. I did not expect to enjoy the format of this book as much as I did. It's an old school format. It's a 3-in-1, 3 kind of shorter stories packed into one book. I found myself really enjoying that in a way that I kind of didn't expect. It kind of took me back a little bit, made me feel like a kid again. And I kind of found myself sort of wanting a monthly digest of like 6 or 7 comics all in one or something like that. It worked for me.
Yeah, that was great. That was definitely a callback to the 70s books, mostly DC, where you'd have like an 8-pager or whatever, a 5-pager at the end.
Yeah,
great stuff.
There's going to be more of those, because I've already written a couple of 8-page backup stories for future Superman books. So I think like that's something DC's looking at, of like, how do we bring these backup stories? And also, I know what I'm dealing with is like a lot of characters that people have not seen forever. I just keep emailing them going, can I use this guy? And they're like, yeah, sure, go. So I think you'll see more of that format, at least on DC side, of these like backup stories showing up in the primary books, which I think is cool.
I enjoyed the Guardian book. I thought it was fun. I don't like the Guardian. I had exactly the same sort of reaction you had when you were talking about when you were like, oh yeah, I guess I could do the Guardian, right? Like, he's like, you see him in Young Justice, and he's like being mind controlled, and then like you watch the CW Supergirl, and like, what? I guess Jimmy Olsen's the Guardian now or something. I don't know. This is weird. The Guardian has always been really doofy to me. Like, he has just like this doofy quality about him. But then I read your book, and I still found him very doofy, but in a way that worked. Like, he was very earnest. You know what I mean? Like, I read that book, and I was like, oh man, this is like Chidi Adeganye as the Guardian. Like this kind of like awkward, like doofy but earnest noir quality. I don't know. It was a strange book, but I enjoyed it.
Chidi Adeganye.
That's just what the impression that I got. But I liked it. So
no, I'm glad. Like I said, I was trying to think of like, it was a lot of just like I wanted it to feel like an old school 80s Marvel comic, specifically Captain America and Daredevil.
Yeah.
Because partially
that's what he is, right? He's a combination of those two guys.
Yeah.
So absolutely, like he's immediately in the middle. So it was definitely thinking that of like, okay, I mean, he's got a shield. He does acrobatics. Like it's got to be in that.
He drives cars badly. Like,
yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like at the end of the day, that's to some extent, Guardian is always Captain Army Navy store, right? Like.
It's a very strange character because he's got the acrobatics, but he's so chunky. He's got the helmet, he's got the pads, he's got the big bulletproof thing on. His shields doesn't look aerodynamic. It's so weird, but he pulls it off. I don't know. He's like an everyman who worked out a lot.
And I think in that way, like the only thing you can really do with him, at least the only thing I could figure out to do with him is that earnestness of like, I don't think he can wisecrack in this outfit. I don't think he can like, he can't be like Peter Parker, who's just kind of making light of the situation. He also looks like he's on a SWAT team.
Yeah, like, exactly. Yeah.
SWAT. And I was like, that's also the summer we've gone through. That's going to be an interesting thing to wrestle with. So yeah, there was definitely some elements of that, of trying to figure out like, we've got to call attention to what he looks like and the good and the bad of it, and figure out ways to make it operate.
You get a snapshot of his character, of his personality on page 5, panel 1, when he says, "So many of them, I've got one chance at this," and he hurls his shield. Like, that's classic comic book,
old school,
dialogue right there.
Absolutely.
I love it. One shot. I've got one shot.
One shot. This is it.
And then I might, I don't know, kick a few people in the head because I really have more than one shot. The comics, but
Oh man, yeah, you're totally right. This is very much an 80s action drama, man. Yeah.
It's definitely what I was thinking of. I mean, it was what I was reading, like when they hired me for it, I was right in the middle of rereading both of those books, right? Of like, and it was deep in the Frank Miller Daredevil, which I just fell back in love with, of like how also earnest but ridiculous, like the character of the it's such a soap opera, and like this gladiator character is completely ridiculous but also terrifying. Like he's able to be both, where you're like, I find this like, if I saw this guy on the street, I would laugh. Like or in a movie, I'd be like, this is the most silly thing ever. But then you put him alone in a room with a woman, and I'm like, oh my god, like what's gonna happen in this page turn? Just kind of a funny trick that they're able to pull off.
You're talking about the possibility of going back to the well for older characters to bring back, and I'm just going to paste an image in the chat. I want you to take a look at that because this is who I want to see in this version of this guy.
Sorry, I'm just opening the chat.
This is terrible podcasting because you can't see listeners.
Okay. I'll put it in the notes. Oh.
This is Silver Age. I got a chunk of kryptonite in my heart, Metallo. That's who I want to see.
That guy's awesome. I'm gonna ask for copies of that book like as soon as we're off. His old school outfit is amazing.
It is. It's very like Scarecrow.
In the skull, like it's so weird. In like such a fun.
Such a weirdo.
because there's a lot of those heroes. It's been fun going back in those because there's been a lot of times where I've been asking, I'm like, I want to read like every appearance of Loose Cannon, or show me everything with Ambush Bug. Like I want like no one will touch. I want to look at them right now because I think there's a missed opportunity, or Gangbuster, like just characters who haven't shown up in a long time, and I'm still fighting a little bit. Like I also want to bring in, like, there's Captain Comet, who's from Silver Age 2, that I'm like, I want to bring him in. So we'll see how long they let me do the backups. If it goes long enough, maybe some of those guys will show up. But yeah.
I mean, you know, maybe John's incapacitated. Maybe Kara's on the moon or whatever. Maybe Captain Carrot's got to show up and help out Metropolis. I don't know. I'm just saying. It's a possibility.
I don't know. All of this is the stuff I love. Like, and I will say the backups have been fun because even the ones I'm doing now, I will say they have a similar feel, old school feel, as the Guardian backup I did. There's something about the 8-page format that I'm like I can't. I think at this point they've already said that he shows up, but like the first ones with like Bibbo Bixby, like Bibowski, and so it's like trying to figure out like he's such an old-fashioned type character. Like, how do we make this fun and exciting? And I found a lot of it was like, well, it's been fun because I'm like, well, what do I miss? What were the things that when I was 10 or 11, I opened a comic and I immediately fell in love with, you know, that I sometimes don't see as often anymore.
The rise of like gritty comics in some ways has eliminated like some of the iconic designs and art styles that we used to get. You don't get many, like, I'm thinking of like the gangsters from Dick Tracy, like that type of like iconic art you don't see in comics very often anymore.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, everything's great in moderation. I write a bunch of things that are adult and gritty, and I was obsessed with Vertigo growing up. But there's also, like, we were talking about old X-Men books, and like there's something about the teenage like melodrama soap opera of like Claremont's X-Men that I'm like, I miss and I love. And there's like so many books that I was obsessed with that, like, when I go back through my old long boxes at like my parents' house, or when they're like, you have to get this out of our house. You know, I go through some of those books and I'm like, yeah, I love gritty stories, but there's also times where I miss just like a good pure comic fight, like single shot issue where, you know, we get it all. Like,
we have been reading the book where we're doing a close read on the show right now is Astro City, and it is purifying. I highly recommend going back and reading it just as a brain cleanse from all of this.
I mean, yeah, Kurt's, I mean, he's incredible. I will say, the first blow my mind moment I ever had as a professional was when Thumbs first came out, without anyone asking him to do it. I don't know how. I think Image gave him a preview copy. He tweeted out that it was like his favorite book, like how much he loved the book. And I remember I contacted Hayden. I called Hayden immediately because I was like, Kurt Busiek just like tweeted about our book on like and loved it. And like it was cool because it created like a back and forth. Like me and him would then interact occasionally. And it was like, it was just kind of blew my mind. I'm like, you're the guy who's like the guy of superhero comics. Like you do it as good as anybody. Mm-hmm. Just kind of an amazing writer, amazing guy.
When you were noodling about what you loved in Silver Age comics, what you loved, you know, I looked up. I was like, Silver Age Superman. What did I love back then? Because I read those. It was whenever Superman and Batman would just trade uniforms and pretend to be each other. Which happened all the time.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if you were going to go there every time Superman had a new power.
Like, yeah.
Like I love when he used to be able to like the ones where he makes the mini Supermen, like where suddenly there's like hundreds of mini Supermen that like fly out of his hand. Like,
so gross. So weird.
We were talking about this just last week. The cellophane.
The cellophane S.
Yes, from Superman 2.
Well, and it's funny too because like current comics are so obsessed with continuity. And in a lot of ways, it's like, if you go back to where this thing whole started, like continuity is like such a fluid and open concept. Like
that, I mean, it really was like, it just wasn't a thing. Like Deep Space Nine was significant because it was one of the first shows. It was like the first Star Trek show that had a running plot throughout it, right? Like shows didn't do that then. Comics didn't do that then. It was like, that's why events were special kind of back then. You know what I mean? Because like they were sort of like long things with a continuous story, as opposed to whatever we feel like doing this week. You know, where are they? What powers? Monster of the week? Whatever.
Right. No, absolutely.
So Sean, what comes next for you and Superman? Like, you've got the follow-up.
Nothing. to be fully honest, I mean, for me and Superman, like, no, I knew that coming in, that this was going to be these two for multiple reasons. There will be a bigger announcement about a book I'm doing somewhere else really soon. That kind of has been awesome, but time-wise has made doing other things impossible.
Can you give us any hints at all?
Just come
is
back.
It one of the big? Is it one of the big two?
I can't say it. The first issue, I believe, will be coming out in May, which means it will have to be showing up in the February solicit.
Okay.
So it'll also give us a reason for me to come back a fourth time, and we can talk.
Absolutely.
We'll come back.
You can be a co-host. I'll drop.
Fine.
But yeah, I mean, I'm doing some backup stories in Tales of Metropolis. They're called Tales of Metropolis. They'll be in the back of the Superman book for the next 10 months. So they'll be like these little 8-page stories. And then Kate and I are finishing up Bliss. That'll be the next issue comes out in February. We'll be running the next 4 issues of that. And then Hayden and I have a weird supernatural Western coming out in the summer.
Nice.
Oh man.
That'll be fun. It's also going to be a departure because people who've read Thumbs are the few, like when Hayden and I get together to do a book, we seem to not know how long a single issue should be. So it's always like 5 pages. Every single issue of this book, which is called Above Snakes, is 16 pages. It's like old school comics. They're all single shots, self-contained, but they're short and contained.
Who doesn't love cowpunk, right?
I think it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it. There's some really. It's basically about a cowboy, a cowboy who has, as all cowboys, has lost his family and is looking for revenge, and he has basically an imaginary vulture who keeps like pushing him on into the danger and the unknown of trying to do this, though he doesn't necessarily want to. And it plays with a lot of tropes. Like there's a bar he goes to, and everyone at the bar is someone who's lost their entire family and is searching for revenge. So they're always like,
okay, I'm very excited to read this now.
It's a fun, weird book. So they'll see each other and they're just like, Jimmy, did you get that group of guys? And he's like, nah, I fucking got away again. So it's a wild book. It came out of, I asked Hayden, we finished Thumbs, and I was like, what do you want to work on next? He was like, a Western. And I was like, I fucking hate Westerns. And then I was just like, well, first I had to ask myself, do I actually hate Westerns? And then realized like, I love a lot of Western movies. It seems to be the concept of the Western that I have issues with. So then it became like, well, what if we just blow the whole thing up and have a lot of fun within it? So I'm looking very forward to that book. And yeah, the book in May is a monster. So like, it's a lot of work.
I can't wait. I always love the back pages of Jonah Hex, so I'm looking forward to that.
I love Jonah.
I love Jonah Hex.
The Sixth Gun was one of my favorite books in quite a while.
Oh yeah, no, I've got that right back here.
Yeah, I mean those are all, I think, good precursors for what like I'm drawing from in terms of like, what do I think this thing should feel like and be. And what Hayden's been doing, it like the way he brings his colors, it also feels it feels very much like a Western, but so different. It's been cool to work on.
as you were talking, the thing that's flowing to my from my subconscious was a realization that every time you see Wolverine in a bar, that's a Western. That's a cowboy story.
Yeah.
He always wears a cowboy hat.
Absolutely. I mean, Logan in a lot of ways is like an old school, like Western, like the old Logan movie is very much like a
Western. Shane, come back. Yeah.
So like they definitely play in those tropes. That's why when like I realized I said out loud I don't like a Western when Hayden mentioned it, I was like, that's not fucking true. Like I love Westerns. I love samurai movies. Like they're all kind of married to, they're super similar. I mean, half the time the Westerns just steal the plot from
yes, that's true.
Magnificent Seven, yeah.
I mean, if you're gonna steal from the best, right?
Yeah, I can't complain. I like both. I love it.
Hell yeah.
Fun though, guys.
Yeah.
This has been a blast. And I'm like, well, here's the deal. I'm pretty sure we could take a quick break and keep going. However, that is unfair to a dad who's got a gigantic monster of a project. And it's also like late for us Midwestern folk. We got to go like, you're now a Midwesterner, Sean, like, cause you live in Iowa. You're maybe from New York. But
Marty and I apparently need to prepare for our new careers as longshoremen tonight. So
look, it is cold in the Chicago.
I'm also cold.
And also, I'll be blunt, like my hair, I haven't gotten a haircut since since the last time Sean was on the show. So it's like, this is COVID. And so, no, I am going to be working on the docks. I'm going to go sing some Bon Jovi. I'll be back later. Yeah, Sean, when the book is solicited, we'll have you back. I have an idea. I would love, I don't know if you and Caitlin would want to do it, but if you guys would want to talk to each other about the new books that are coming out on our show, that I think would be amazing.
I pitched that a while ago. I was like, we should have them both.
You did.
I think that's possible.
All right.
That's possible. I'll talk to Caitlin again tomorrow so I can mention it.
Tell her we said hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We will do the ending in post, but Sean, like, man, the book is great. I'm excited for you. This is going to take you, and like the backup books, super excited for more Tales of Metropolis. It's going to be awesome, man.
So
listeners,
many congratulations.
if you're watching the stream, just get the book because Brain Cells is the best villain debut probably in the past 5 years in comics. It's super good. Super
Brain
good.
Cells is pretty great. Brain Cells is great.
Always a pleasure to be on here with guys. I appreciate it.
So many congratulations.
Thank you, guys. Yep. Thanks a lot. Thanks for being there from the beginning.
Of course. We're in it all together.
Absolutely.
All right. I will now stop.